And if you're lucky enough to be American, you had half your property rights or a third of your property rights. And if you're someone living in a more hostile regime, you've known forever you didn't have any. Maybe in parts of Africa, they have 5% of their property rights. That's why Africa's still poor, because it's so impoverished. Bitcoin, not only does it give you perfected property rights in America or in China or in North Korea or in Cuba, it gives perfected property rights without prejudice to everybody on the globe, regardless of their economic circumstances. If you have a $50 Android phone, you have the same perfected property rights that Bill Gates has. And so it is the ultimate egalitarian, utilitarian entitlement of the right to property. I feel that it's impossible to store your life's work or to continue your life's work. The future looks hopeless. So in a world where if I told you that your money was going to be worthless on January 1st, 2023, there aren't very many long-term projects you would begin. If I went into your bank account and I converted all your money from dollars to pesos, devalued it to 20 to 1, and then told you 3% of it back each year for the next 20 years while I continue to devalue it 3 to 1 every year afterwards, the world seems hopeless. And so to a certain extent, having currency which doesn't lapse energy, that is true, that is also incorruptible, that is also transportable, it means that 8 billion people can trade with each other across political domains at the speed of light, and that definitely is a productivity driver. And it means that 8 billion people can trade with their future selves. I can make a deal with my great-grandchildren, or I can look forward 100 years and I can build something today and plan for 100 years in the future. So having the ability to channel energy through time and space with integrity allows you to conceptualize beautiful things through time and space. And maybe another analogy I give is if you're in New York City and you look at one of those skyscrapers that goes up 100 stories, and then you imagine taking the steel out of the skyscraper, and then you imagine converting the schist, the granite underneath the skyscraper, into sand, and then you try to figure out what happens to the building. You realize that if you have the granite without the steel, it's a 6-story building. And if you have the building on sand, it's a 6-story building for a few months until it's a 1-story building. So you can't physically build beautiful things if you don't have the material strength to fight against the forces of nature, gravity, entropy. And I think you could think of Bitcoin as like a crypto steel. It's something, if you wanted to build an economic structure that'll last 100 years, you certainly can't do it with the peso, and you probably can't do it with the dollar. You can't do it with gold. You can't do it with most things. You need something that will hold its energy for 100 years. And if you want to build something which is intricate, the velocity of money, and we haven't talked about it, but the velocity of fiat money is maybe 12 transfers a year at best, and the energy lapse is 30% a year. So you have a very imperfect material. The velocity of money or monetary energy through Bitcoin, especially on a Lightning network, could be 12 million times an hour with no energy lapse. So I think Bitcoin is really critical to productivity because it represents 1 million times more efficient way to transfer energy through time and space. And we talked about half-life, right? 2% inflation a year is supposed to be fairly innocuous. It isn't. 2% means that your energy disappears in 30 years. This is the difference between me saying you have a life expectancy of 30 years or 0% a year lapse is a life expectancy of forever. Right? At 0%, the energy and your life lasts for 1 billion years. At 2%, you lose half of it every 30 years, you're dead in 100 years. So the technical implication of a system that has energy lapse and low velocity is not well understood in the economy right now, because we've been living in a world without steel, without glass, building stuff in terracotta with wooden beams that rot. Go visit Rome and look at what's left. And they used to use wooden beams, none of them are left. They use certain metal pipes that rusted, none of them are left. 2,000 years, that stuff is gone. Some of the granite's left. I think structures built in Bitcoin, they'll be here. You can, and this is so bizarre, if you were to say to someone, you can actually build an economic entity that'll last 1,000 years, they would blink and look at you, and they'd think, why would you even want to do that? And that's because they can't conceptualize of anything in our modern world lasting 1,000 years. But people worked on the cathedral at Notre Dame, they had an idea for something that might last. And is it stupid or irrational to want something to last 1,000 years? It's just, we've been so beat down. People have conditioned us to think that we shouldn't expect anything to last. Nothing will be built to last. That we're accepting this kind of mediocre, corrupt, dirty money in the same way that you would be pumping dirty blood into your system or eating rotting food. If I was giving advice to someone getting started in their career, and they say, how do I prosper? You start by saying, learn to read, learn to write. Reading, writing, arithmetic was like the early trope, right? But more precisely, learn to speak English and communicate in English, because being the best communicator in Swahili or Tamil or any other great language but that has 1/1000th of the economic energy in it means that you won't be able to sell your products and you won't be able to buy from the rest of the systems. So adopting the dominant protocol, economic language protocol, is really critical. Learning math, pretty important to be able to think mathematically. Another important protocol, learning the monetary protocol. Adopting the dominant monetary protocol is the third idea, and Bitcoin is the dominant monetary protocol. And here I would say, not any crypto protocol. There are 20,000 cryptos that are garbage, and they're a waste of time. Just like you tell your kids, learn 192 languages. No, like Navajo is not going to make you successful any more than the native language of 4,700 tribes in Africa. It's not going to make you successful. If you meet with the person that's an advocate for that, they're going to tell you why you should, but they'll be wrong. They're disinterested. There is a right answer. And the right answer is master the dominant monetary protocol. Bitcoin is the most ethically sound, technically sound, economically sound of these monetary protocols we have available to us in the world, and it's about 95% dominant right now amongst all of the true crypto networks. So the mission is spread the protocol, spread the gospel, if you will. There is a solution, right? And there's a lot of false alleys you can go down that will actually lead you to nothing.